Thank you.
I'll be around if you have anything.
Okay. Give it some time.
Yeah. From what that thing hears and what it sees, I don't know if we should be too worried. There's a reason why he's setting up this one. Yeah, it's like, so if we're doing that, give this thing to.
Oh, you're going.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're funded, and we're now funded analytics company on IPO.
Oh, yes.
And anonymous, I'm gonna lead with anonymous analytics engine, and so I talked to Dietrich about it, like I got on the phone with him, we got the go ahead for the accelerator, so we started to go to Switzerland, Alpine, get our asses there. It's like, still a lot of work that we haven't even, nothing's been done yet.
The file.
It is.
Yes.
Great.
It is.
I love the ATX Dow shirt.
Hell yeah.
Are you Ken?
Yeah.
Alex.
Hey, Alex. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming.
What's your name?
Angelo.
Angelo. I'm Ken.
Logan.
Logan. I'm Ken. Okay, I saw your.
Dante, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Dante.
Dante. I'm Ken. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, welcome. We're just like hanging out a bit. There's pizza in the back, so
Okay.
Angelo, feel free to get pizza.
Yeah,
too,
usually
at
it takes-
any point.
Usually it takes 10 minutes or so for
Yeah,
people.
we just kind of hang out the first 10 minutes and then we'll get into the presentations.
I have a good buddy who was super duper in deep with the FileCoin crew, but I never got like super into it. You know, obviously there's like only so much bandwidth you have, so.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, obviously I'm familiar with like what it does, what FileCoin does and everything like that, but I never got too deep into like the community.
Cool. Do you spend a lot of time working with ATX now? I assume,
Yeah.
based on your shirt.
Yeah, well, dude, I have so many of these. It's funny, like, you never know if you like look like a douchebag. You're like, oh, you know, like.
No, I love
but
it.
I have like, I don't think I have a FileCoin shirt, but I have so many like from conferences and stuff. So it's like, pretty much all my shirts now are like crypto free, you know, community swag stuff. So.
It's
It's the best.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
You don't have to worry about what you wear.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I have like full outfits. You know, I have like beanie, sweatshirt, socks. It's awesome.
I'm excited for pants. When people start giving really nice pairs of pants.
That would be a game
I
changer.
have some NFT ones with the parents.
Those are, you know,
Do
I can't wait.
Do you have an HDMI by chance? No? We have one, it's just like, I wasn't sure if it was.
What would be a good, what, like sweatpants or like
Sweatpants is definitely a
Sweatpants?
go-to.
I
Yeah.
think my go-to is hoodies.
Yeah.
hoodies?
Hoodies
Yeah.
are,
Hoodies are the best.
yeah, you take a little bit, like the last one at the event in Lisbon, they had like Lululemon hoodies.
Whoa,
So yeah.
that's like,
I grabbed me
wow,
one for me. and
that's
my
really
wife.
expensive.
Yeah.
I was there. I didn't get shit.
You need to know when, who to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course they give all the good swag to you guys. Yeah, what I thought was crazy was when we were at the NFT on storage
Oh,
event
yeah, exactly.
here in Austin, they had a bunch of Texas swag. Look at this.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Whoever designed this, they deserve a a medal. Okay, we got boots. This is for Texas. This was at an
Totally.
Austin event. Like they got cowboy hats.
This last year, yeah.
Yeah, last year. I saw this, I'm like, so yeah, Orbit needs to make a bunch of like swag and stuff here. Like for our events, we're gonna make swag.
What do you mean there's no swag?
Not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Not yet.
I mean, okay, the
Oh, I
pizza
forgot
needs to
fucking,
yeah,
I
be
forgot
good for
stickers.
that.
Yeah.
I forgot stickers.
Oh yeah, our
Oh
stickers.
no, that's not good.
What do you guys think about bucket hats?
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
For swag. I was talking to someone, a company that I work with, and that was one of the things that was raised, and I was like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, have you, so yeah, the PL stickers,
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing in the world. Protocol Labs, like FileCoin, the stickers that these guys come up with, it's like,
I'll bring you some more if you
I would love, yeah. These are like, you get like some really, these are rare. It's like, oh, I'm sure you've got some really fucking rare ones, right? So like, all of them fit together, right? And so when Alex and I, we have like projects in the ecosystem now. Like we have actual apps that have like a couple thousand okay, like we're a real deal. It's time to come up with stickers, right? So we're coming up with stickers. These are Alex and I stickers right here. First we came out with that bullshit. And we just,
If it's the core, it should be
look at that, it's terrible. Who the fuck was thinking that?
What,
And then you come up with this,
I remember
and it's like,
Logan had
okay,
an issue
now
when I
we're
asked him,
talking.
Yeah, you're part of it.
Now we're talking, and then this is the new one that we just got funding for.
What's that? What company is that?
So this is Lato.
How do you spell that?
Leto, Leto.
Like Jared Leto?
No, like Duke Leto Atreides.
What is it? What do you do? What is
So
it?
yeah, this is this is brand new. Like I don't really have much to talk about this too much, but it's a platform for IPFS. Like when you're building on peer-to-peer networks, turns out you don't know what the hell's going on. So Leto, that's what we're here for. The reason why we named it Leto is because yeah, we're like in Leto.
Doom?
Dune.
Oh, Dune.
I don't like Doom. Not really. I'm a pretty positive person. And this is open links, and so this is a link in bio app. Do you know what it like links is?
Yeah.
This so we have a link tree built on IPFS on FileCoin.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So like
What's it called?
It's called OpenLinks. OpenLinks.io. Go check it out, everyone.
Well, the reason I ask is because like I think I was talking to someone earlier today about like Lens and like there's all sorts of shit that's built around Lens.
Oh, yeah.
And you're a Lens friend?
I'm a Lens friend.
Dude, my name is Ken, so my lens is KENNS, so it's Ken's Lens, so it's Ken's Lens Friends. I should have, I'm so stupid, I should have gotten like, sat on something cool or like a good idea like beers.lens, you know how like Budweiser bought the .eth from somebody, beer.eth? But I'm dumb, so I just like, just do my domain.
That's called domain
Swatting.
Domain squatting. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can if you're early enough, but
I have FileCoin.eu.
FileCoin.eu.
Nice.
You have that?
That's mine,
You're like, you better pay.
One day it'll be a card.
Yeah,
Who knows?
that's funny. FileCoin. Yeah, we have we got OpenLinks.io. I want a network, I want like Lato.network, but a .network. It's minimum.
It's expensive.
Yeah, like
$1,500 and $1,500.
Yeah, $2,000.
Yeah, and then there's dot
Depending
storage.
on what it is.
Yeah, dot storage is a good one.
That one's
Hey, I'm your 100th follower.
beautiful.
Oh man, thank you, man. Have a piece. You gotta eat some pizza.
Yeah, just for that, we're gonna offer you all kinds of all you
I
can eat pizza.
should have a sticker for you, man, but
Yeah, that was-
failed.
you
I
know,
can't
I-
believe dude, that's terrible. I can't ever do that again. I'm just
Have
gonna.
you guys thought about doing something like specifically with
That's
the
very
DAO?
expensive.
Cause like,
Definitely.
Circle.
like what I
Okay,
mean
here you
is
go.
like,
Here you go. You're the
What?
100th person. That's
Oh, yeah.
a brand new sticker.
That's when you're in a.
the reason I ask is because like we've done events with
It's a-
like
it's a
Kwai, with
program
like
where
Topple. These are just
storage
like
providers
various.
test
I
the
think
load as
they're
a
both like
application.
L1s, but anyways,
I've
we've
been
had
doing
like
that for a year and a half.
we have like a big mailing list,
So
for
wait, so you
example,
guys are, like,
and we get
responsible for, like, keeping sure
50,
that
100
it's stable.
people out to
Yeah, we
events.
did do
typically.
stress testing.
Yeah. No, we should definitely. do
In like,
something.
in like.
Yeah, we're trying to do like a
Because
monthly
it's like
event
if
here.
you're running the like
we
node
can
and
get
you're
more,
going
we
on
can
and
add
offline,
here,
you lose
so
track.
you guys.
Quickly.
Yeah.
So like I'm sure
Whatever,
that system
whatever you
is
think,
probably tied with
you know,
like.
we do like
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that's
there's
just like
some
general
that's
audience,
still
we do like
open.
developer focused stuff, so whatever.
Are you guys familiar with Keiretsu?
No.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna take you guys to Keiretsu. All right, so Keiretsu's on South Congress. It's for Web3 people. I assume you guys all live in Austin, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's and you can hold events there as well.
Welcome, sir. Welcome. Great to see you.
Okay.
It's the General Distributed, I think is the name of the VC firm, and it's like, do you know where like the Hotel Austin is? It's like the thing. Hey, what's up? What's your name?
Yeah.
Dowie? I'm Ken. Nice to meet you.
If you wanted to jump up
Like the School for the Deaf.
Okay.
It's like right across the street on South Congress.
Oh, really?
And the Academy,
That's right, we were at the
but
first
it's like free for like people that work in Web3. Like the idea is it's like a co-working space, and they have like offices and like free
Right
food
now,
and drinks.
currently.
It's freaking sweet. Keiretsu. You can't find it online. But I
Whatever's
can,
ending.
I can
that's
show
what
you. It's
you'll
hard
be.
to find.
Yeah,
Like on
depends on
purpose.
what,
Right.
But you're on. Hold on. You're
I work
in.
on solutions and
Are you on
architecture.
Telegram or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm also new to Discord.
So,
That's why I wanted you to talk. That's why
I just
wanted
hate
to talk
Discord.
about
I don't know. I wish we had our own
We
Telegram.
figured, luckily we figured a lot of it out. Yeah, it's held up on
well, it's good. Maybe you should talk to Angel. He's like doing, he's moving data into FileCoin.
Okay.
And he's
Alright,
working along with
alright.
building.
How would I?
So,
Let's see.
like build sort of like indexing on DAG trees without like indexing the entire tree, which is just one CID. Because it's
And here's the thing is like
FileCoin, so we could basically
I'm
the
gonna
same,
put
right? It's the
ATX
same.
down, truthfully.
Because I mean, yeah, it's
gotta-
legit. The file
How have you been, man? What's going on?
So it's like, if it was
Yeah,
bad,
busy.
like that's
How about you guys?
And you guys are all in touch
Building.
too, right?
Same. Yeah. Building,
Okay,
building like
alright,
crazy. Yeah, we
because
got a
I was
couple
gonna
of apps
say,
and
like,
ecosystem
I'll
going.
tell him, I'll show
we
him,
started a
like,
new project.
Kretsu,
We'll tell you about it.
and
We're
then,
basically like
you guys
producing
can go to it
metrics
too.
for
No,
IPFS.
definitely.
It's
So
a free
understanding like
co-working
how many
space,
people look to your
and it's like
IPFS object,
Mm.
like
the,
and tracking
the,
that during
the
the
VC firm that runs it is basically like,
yeah.
you come here for free,
What
you
is
can
it?
have like, work for free.
Oh, yeah. So actually, I'm gonna talk about it today.
Okay,
But
okay,
basically, yeah, it's
I
basically
think
the way
the main
that
idea is to become like
you
a
save
hub
data using this
of,
technology.
of,
It's
like,
basically
where
imagine like a
crypto people
BitTorrent,
meet
Right.
and
right? It's
work,
kind of like
so that
Are you familiar with
eventually,
this? Yeah. Okay. You've used it a couple times. So
I don't know.
they have first
I'm not
pick.
gonna ask
I think
more.
that's it.
Yeah. So
I
imagine
know
like
we
BitTorrent,
were.
but
I looked at
kind of combined with like.
Yeah, no.
So it's basically a
Dude,
peer-to-peer
Kretsu's so
network
much
where you
better.
upload data.
And like,
It's amazing. I'm
the
like,
data
no wonder
is
you guys
addressed
think
by
you guys
its
are gonna charge
content.
this much.
And so
Like,
the
no,
binary
just
for the
show up.
file,
Like,
just
I
say it's
can get a desk
a
for
photo, right? That
1 month. I
binary
could buy my own desk.
gets
Why am I
its
gonna
own
do it?
unique
Like,
identifier
I
called a
just-
CID.
I can't believe
And so
I
that's
drive
based on
by that
and so if
thing
the
and I'm
binary
just like,
changes at
how do you
all,
think you
even
can
one
do
pixel
that?
on that image or whatever,
Yeah.
a new ID gets created.
And Kretsu does
That's
have like,
that's
you
really
wanted to
powerful
like,
thing.
they have
So
a
They're secure.
private
yeah,
office,
so it's verifiable data,
how
and so
much is it?
when you
How
have
much
this
is it?
peer-to-peer network
The
of
private
nodes around the
stuff? I don't
world,
even
right?
know.
And so you
I
are
don't
asking
know.
for a certain CID.
I would love
Kretsu's
to
ask
totally
any
free
node
though.
in the network. You don't have to ask a
South
specific
Congress.
server like the
You know where
network
School of
server.
Deaf is?
You can ask any node in the
It's
network
right across the
because
street. It's like
whichever node has that CID, you know
There's
for
like
sure
some-
just figured out where it was. Literally like.
And so
last
it's
week.
amazing because it's kind of like
It's
a
like-
peer-to-peer network
it's like
to make
on-
a
it's
safer,
like,
faster, cheaper internet.
It's,
Right,
yeah,
and
it's
so
just
they're
big
building
school.
all these layers. So IPFS is the
Oh, if you go to on the other side of the lake,
FileCoin
you
is
just
just
go on the other side of the lake.
So that's like
yeah,
the servers
yeah,
for the actual
yeah.
like
South Congress.
the actual like
I'm
file
trying to think of
server.
like, but yeah, South Congress.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll talk about it in my talk. But basically,
You know where all
we're
the
building
shopping places
tools
are
to
with
manage
Nike and all that stuff?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
just take a
We'll
left.
use
boom.
IPFS to serve data,
The whole thing is
but
like
they
the
don't
school
know
of
how many
that,
times
right?
people have access
It's
to
a
it.
nice place.
And so
It's the
we're
nicest
trying to do that in a
place.
very
It's the
private
nicest
and anonymous way
place.
because that's the thing. We don't want to make something worse than we already have.
Yes.
Totally free.
So we're being very careful. We're
And
working with
they
very
wa-
smart
the other
people
thing I was
at
gonna bring up
FileCoin.
is they
We've actually
do
figured out
want
how to do this,
to
right?
encourage
We've been spending a lot of time
meetings
on that
there.
to really
So
learn it.
I can introduce
But
you
anyway,
to
that's
Grady, who
So
is
yeah,
one
thank
of
you.
the
Yeah,
guys
we're
that
like
runs it.
we're guns blazing on
And
that.
he would be like down to,
It's
like,
like
if you guys wanted to host a FileCoin event
And
there,
then,
he would be down.
ChatGPT came out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
that's
That's
it right now.
Oh my god! I mean, that's been our
So you
one of
can
our
give out-
biggest, one of
Are
our
you guys
highest
on Telegram?
performing
We can
employees.
connect.
You know?
I'm a subscriber.
Nice, yeah.
Best $20
Yeah. No doubt. I'm
How do
like
you
whatever you
well, how
want.
do you
Just
prefer
take
to
more.
work?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
do you
legit,
have
man, it's
a
unbelievable. So you use
Discord,
it for your
Telegram?
work?
Yeah, so
Phone number?
I used it. So just today,
You have
yesterday,
a-
my legal department wanted
I thought
to.
you
Oh,
were.
yeah.
Are you on
Whatever's going
Discord?
on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted to export
I just
Slack.
I don't use Discord.
Thank you.
And then
Greetings.
Hey,
how you doing?
Hello. Where? From where?
Okay.
Yes.
I described it.
Yeah.
Got me a script.
I'm Logan.
There you go.
And then I mean, it's a JSON file, so many folders.
Yeah, I'll send you like,
I searched all the folders,
Nice
read
to
the
meet you.
JSON file, and I queried like specific words.
We're just
and then created a
kinda
JSON file
getting set up,
just
ready to
this.
go, have a seat.
Which
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
days, weeks, minutes.
Amazing.
Logan, yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
Did I
Same with
show
us.
you-
We're doing stuff,
give
writing
everybody a-
configurations for like our like
Yeah,
Cloudflare
it's
server,
yeah,
and our,
like,
it's just
if
saving
you
us
know Filecoin
weeks
and
and
protocol
saving us a lot of money too.
So I don't think this is gonna be like a danger or replacing us or.
We just were sponsored by them, so Alex and I and Dante, like we worked with the protocol.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
exactly. It's just, yeah, it's a tool
We
to
do have some
accelerate
people that
it.
are
Yeah,
running,
yeah, yeah. Because it doesn't do the work for you.
know,
No.
but,
Yeah.
It just feels like
most-
instead of
yeah,
waiting
for the
3
most part,
years, now
fans
it's
and,
waiting 6 months.
they sponsor us and stuff, so
Yeah.
we get a lot of help.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. It's, I think that came out since the last time we saw each other.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
Or maybe
The
like
Austin
it got
Web3
really
Filecoin we're
big
big
prior.
So
So you're Austin based, is it just FileCoin that you promote, or is it
it's
also
just like pretty much all
Web3?
PL, like it's all like protocol apps, even Web3 if you
Oh,
kind of want to get
protocol
it
apps.
too. But yeah, FileCoin is the one who sponsors it, but like we will loop in. I don't know if we're supposed to do that, but we do it anyway.
I hope so.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, like we're pushing right now. We're pushing a lot of like FileCoin.
Yeah, guys, help yourself to pizza. There's beer back there. But yeah, we're ready to get started.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
yeah, yes, that's just the food. Hey, that's totally fine. Hey, Dave.
Okay, so here's, it's really,
Right,
right,
well,
Tucson
David.
Congress on this side.
What's up, sir? How you doing?
It's It's, this is the building right
This
here.
is Frank, this is Delaware.
I mean, it's totally unmarked. It's on Academy Drive.
So,
Oh, yeah.
So you just go in that door, and there's one, two, three more. I'll put all this in the chat.
Do you wanna go
Go
after
in that
me on
door.
this one?
yeah.
Elevator at the end. Go to the third floor to the right. Well, if you guys like want, I can like I can meet up to you guys. Cause I usually go there.
That looks super nice and very clear. We're looking at meeting places, so that's like a very opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, for those of you that never been here, this is the Web3 FileCoin Austin meetup group. This is our third meeting to date, and my name's Dante Kalari. I'm one of the organizers. We also, Alex Mirren is one of the other organizers, and Logan Lentz over here also. Yeah, so if you guys need anything from the group, have any questions, you can hit any of us up. This is basically the agenda today. We're gonna just quick announcements. Alex is gonna give a kind of overview of the Protocol Labs ecosystem, which will be helpful for me too. Yeah, I'll give a quick talk about IPFS. We're gonna set up a light node, look at what that looks like, and really looking to see kind of what questions you guys have, what topics you want to talk about. So give that some thought, and we'll come back to you. Yeah, again, we do this the third Tuesday of every month, so we're scheduled in this room. The only month this year we won't be here is December, so but yeah, third Tuesday. The next event is April 18th. And okay, so we also wanted to get a poll here. We've got kind of two logo options. One of them we designed, the other one FileCoin Foundation designed for us. We're kind of curious which one you guys like the most. So could I see a show of hands for who likes number one the most?
Definitely one.
Number two? Nobody? And neither? Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of.
We should
Okay.
do a competition, and whoever comes up with the best Austin Orbit logo,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah, we do want to do some merch. 50? About 50, but could do 5 maybe.
I'll participate for sure.
Yeah, if anybody, feel free to. So we do have a Slack group. Please hit us up on Slack.
Is this like the main FileCoin?
No, this is the Slack just for this group. So yeah, you cannot always talk to any of us. Yeah, and again, if you have any talks you want to give or demos, it's not working. Oh, sorry.
I have one too.
Okay, sorry, I gotta refresh that that QR code, I think.
Oh, yes.
We also have a
Did it
website, so check us out on the website. I think the link to the Slack is on the website. Or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah, the Slack's on the website too, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have a
so-
QR code too, so we can look at that.
Cool. Yeah, austinorbit.io, that's the website. It's on GitHub also. Yeah, so check us out there. Sponsors, FileCoin Foundation is sponsoring this event, along with Convergence, that's my company. Open Links, that's Alex and Logan's project, and Capital Factory. So appreciate the sponsors. And yeah, at the end too, we'll put this up a few more times, but would really appreciate, if you guys fill out the survey. Helps us know what we're doing right and wrong. Yeah, and that's it for now, so I'll pass it off to Alex.
Cool. All right. Cool. So, in this group, like a major motivation of ours, and even the businesses that both Logan and I and Dante work with and do work on, a major motivation for us is helping to make IPFS and FileCoin more usable for developers And so even when we do these events, we're always talking about developer tools to specifically leverage very specific parts of the network. And so, like Dante mentioned, he's going to be walking you through an IPFS light node. So we thought before we get into the next demo, we kind of do a high-level 40,000 foot view of what's this IPFS FileCoin ecosystem and what are the pieces of it? Because even for us, it's so fast-moving, it's so enormous that even for us, sometimes it's hard to keep track of. So I'll be here to kind of walk you through the vision, like what are the values of this community, and then what are the specific solutions that we're working with, IPFS and FileCoin. Obviously, with the open web as it is, there's a lot of different components of that, a lot of different pieces, a lot of different technologies. So specifically, we're talking here about like the Protocol Labs ecosystem of IPFS and FileCoin. So just to give you guys an idea, here are some of the like biggest projects. And then there's thousands of companies that work in the ecosystem that are building on top. And so it's really an amazing ecosystem of development driven primarily by Protocol Labs, but then in the last 3 to 5 years has exploded with implementations, developer tooling, and all kinds of adoption. So anyway, I'm here to talk about this. We are also lucky enough to have Angelo here with us from FileCoin. He can probably give you even more information than I can. So anyway, I want this conversation to be more of a back and forth. I don't really want to just sit here and talk the whole time, so feel free to interrupt. I'm going to focus on FileCoin and IPFS. There's a lot of other stuff though, so we can get into that if people are interested. I thought like a really great way to introduce this would be to go off of a talk that the founder of Protocol Labs did, Juan Bennett. Basically, he did a talk about the vision for the ecosystem, and pretty much this is the summary, is Web3 is about bringing trust to the internet and how we communicate. And so he does a really good job of there's this cool graphic of kind of the iterations of the web as they go, and where we are right now is it's about read, write, and trust. And so that's really like the cornerstone of what we're doing here. There's a lot of projects and a lot of components and a lot of pieces to make this a reality. But anyway, that's kind of like the overarching summary. And so I would highly recommend, I am not Juan Bennett, and so I would highly recommend scanning that QR code and watching the video, because it's incredible. So anyway, just to set the stage a little bit, the last 80 years, computing has completely transformed how humans operate. We do everything online, whether it's work or play, and now we have billions of people who are all connected. That's amazing. All of this technology has given us the opportunity to advance human and artificial intelligent computing. It's also led to an interesting scenario that may not be very good, which is mass surveillance. And so we're sort of teetering on a world where we potentially are entering this kind of Orwellian digital totalitarianism, as Juan Bennett puts it in this talk. And so really, we're at a very critical century for humans and for our species. There's been life on this planet for a very long time, but this century, very specifically, we have a chance to like completely ruin everything we've done, or to really like build and really like improve how humans get things done. So, what's the goal of this? What's the mission of this whole like ecosystem? Make our communication systems trustable with math, cryptography, and economic guarantees. The way that Protocol Labs talks about what they do is they're very, very much inspired by Bell Labs. And so there's this whole R&D pipeline that you can see, that Bell Labs kind of, I guess, pioneered, or they kind of basically sort of made this a thing. And this is the exact same way that Protocol Labs goes about what they do. So Juan Bennett started this in 2014. 9 years later, we've moved into, way past development and production and application development, and there's, as I said, thousands of businesses built on top. Some tools are still in R&D, and they're still, maybe over here. So the ecosystem is growing, and every year more and more tools are unveiled and usable, and they're fulfilling the dream that was kind of set out many, many years ago, and it's, as these things do, they take a lot of time. So, okay, so that's the mission. What are the values here? I think it was important to talk about this because in the blockchain crypto world, sometimes we get lost in the money aspect of it. And so really, like, this is what drives what we work on, what FileCoin works on, what we're all working on. And it's essentially like digital human rights. So I won't go through all of it, but secure data publishing, secure networking, secure storage, fault-tolerant systems. These are things that we have the modern technology to do, but the way that the traditional internet has been set up, we are not doing it like that. And so there's a lot of opportunities for all of us to help usher in this new era using these rights or these values as kind of the North Star. Okay, so talking about the values and the mission a little bit. Now, okay, let's get into like the two big important pieces. Each piece has all kinds of projects underneath, which I'm not going to get into. There won't be time for that. But IPFS is the sort of the initial place where Protocol Labs started. Who here is familiar with like BitTorrent? Cool. I won't ask if you've used it, but I just want to know if you're familiar with it. So if you know about BitTorrent, then you know a lot about IPFS already. It's essentially, it's a peer-to-peer network where you upload data and the data is shared across a variety of peers. And as a user, when I'm calling some data, requesting some data, that data will come from the closest peer to me. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance there and there's a lot of details there, but that's the general premise. And the really exciting thing about IPFS is this content addressing. So when data gets uploaded to the network, it's assigned a unique identifier based on the binary of the file. So what that means is when a new file gets when that file gets edited and the binary changes, a new ID is generated. So now all of a sudden we have verifiable data that we can trust. And we know if we're looking for this specific CID, this specific identifier, and we're calling it from the network, we know that what we get back is going to be the data we're looking for. And so this is really a fundamental shift because the way that the current internet works, that's not the case. And so it's a big topic to talk about how the current internet works, but there's this awesome graphic that someone from the ecosystem created. And essentially, it's talking about breaking free from the client-server model, right? So the way the current internet works, we contact a server, and that server sends us back some more data, right? Whether it's a file or anything, right? And so that is a central point of failure that is basically built on very old technology. And so what IPFS is trying to do is basically solve a lot of these problems. And so, so basically, the story here is when a service goes down, or when data is taken down, or if a service is compromised, all of a sudden, as end users, we have no control, and our lives and maybe even our businesses are affected because we don't have control over that system. For example, we build with a lot of microservices, a lot of APIs, right? So we rely on a lot of cloud services. If that stuff goes down, we don't have much, there's not much we can do. And so the whole idea here is to build a verifiable content-addressed web that developers can rely on to be there when they need it. Any questions on that? I could probably explain it better, but I don't know if anyone. Yeah.
This would probably go into the details, but I was thinking of how do you actually host the files, and how do you make sure that it's available enough? But if have a spike and my website's popular all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So the way that the network was initially created is people run nodes on their laptops, people run nodes on servers, and those nodes get distributed across the world, right? The problem is what you just said. I have a company and I have 100,000 requests going in one day or 1 week, whatever. How do I know that those nodes are going to be servicing that request? So there's a bunch of companies that have popped up in the last probably 3 or 4 years, and they do this exact service. And so they're called pinning services. We're actually sort of trending in that direction. But essentially, there's companies that help you onboard data to the network, and then they provide the hosting guarantee on that, as part of that deal. So you can basically use them as kind of the service provider to basically save data to the network, and then as an application developer, you can use their APIs to call that data and to do different things.
And do you have to trust them like you formerly had to trust
Well,
AWS?
the awesome thing is you're addressing with a content identifier. So if you're asking the question, you know what data they're gonna send back, because you're asking with something that can't be changed. So
you don't have to trust them. That's the point. Because they're hosting this data in these nodes, and as long as it has that content identifier, you can be certain that they're giving you the data that you're calling.
What about paying for the storage though? If you rely on them to do that and then they don't do that?
So that's all inherent of building any system on the internet. IPFS has given us a new protocol in which you can transport data. They haven't replaced modern, you can't replace physics in which somebody needs to be hosting something. So you still have to host it somewhere. Just now you can actually verify that the data you're hosting and you're retrieving is the data you want. And So, and FileCoin is the commoditization of that storage, and so like, now we've gotten like commoditized data. If you have storage, you can host it to our network, and people can store it with you. Like people will store on your server, and you're given money, and they do it directly now. So that kind of like takes care of like a lot or some of the hosting, you know, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the main benefit is security, that I know what file I'm getting.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you can validate.
Yeah, but also
with
like,
the hash that it's the actual file that you're requesting.
yeah, yeah,
And then FileCoin is interesting because you don't have to necessarily trust the provider that you're storing it with. You can just trust basically the code that runs the network, the different mechanisms on the network. They have to submit verifiable proofs. I think it's like every hour, and then every 24 hours, if any of those proofs weren't submitted correctly, they'll, another 24 hours later, if they still haven't submitted those proofs, they'll get docked money, but the money only comes out of your account once they've proven that they're still storing the file that they've proven is your file, right? So, yeah, it just adds layers of trust,
And if they don't
verifiability.
pay that, you see that they don't, can you make the payment before it, essentially that data vanishes from the network because nobody's paid it,
Yeah.
there's no incentive to store it, or does the storage fee have to come from the originating source?
Oh, I can add a little bit to that.
Sure.
Um,
Sorry if this is way
No,
too.
no, no, no,
Second-
like I said, interrupt away.
These are great questions.
On FileCoin, you see it as when you're working with storage providers where you're like storing the data, it's not just going to one place. It's going to 10 places, right? You want that 99.99999 like resiliency on your network all the time, right? So how many nines you want depends on how many copies are being distributed over the network. And that's kind of up to the client, and you can store it as many times as you want because the storage providers that are storing it are incentivized to store it, right? But the other side, right, what Dante just mentioned is that if they're not doing what they should be doing, right, they get slashed or penalized based on, you know, the amount of storage that they're not hosting anymore. So it's two ways, like it makes the data immutable, it makes it verifiable, it's always online, and the data itself, the people that are storing it are incentivized to keep it online because else it's costing them money. Like, if you look at all these benefits, no cloud provider on the planet right now does it that way, right? AWS is not gonna be penalized because they're not, you know, storing your data anymore, right? So it's a way different economic model to make sure that the data is always there. And then based on the CID that IPFS is based on, you're 100% sure that the data you're accessing is that data. So even if it changes, it's a new CID, so it can never change, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You had a question?
No, that's just basically how I understood it. It's kind of like if you have each computer, well, the way I understood it, I don't know if I'm right or not, maybe correct me on this, but it's every computer can potentially be a node where you would end up, if you have free space in your hardware, you end up storing some of that files. And so there's no point of actual failure. So let's say that I won't call you D because I don't have your full name.
David, yes.
His computer goes down where you really can't access your information from his computer, but then you'd still have the information that's still active on this computer. So you'd still be able to pull up the exact same file you were asking for because.
No, I understand that, I
For
guess,
IPFS.
to use a specific example that might illustrate the point, Web3 social is hot right now. I can go create a lens profile, I can upload a video to the blockchain, to Polygon, and I can choose FileCoin as my storage, I can point it to IPFS, but then I'm kind of relying on that DApp to pay that storage for me, for the video that I own, that's my content, but I'm still trusting that that network is going to continue to make those payments, because if they stop, then there's no incentive for anybody to store anything, it goes away eventually. So I guess my question is, if I, either as the DApp provider relying on one of these middleware people, or as the end consumer relying on the social DApp to pay that storage, I can verify if it's been done or not, but if it hasn't been done, how do I then make that payment from does it matter who makes the payment? Does
Oh,
that
I
make
see what
sense? So
you're
that
saying.
not the redundancy of it, I get that, but.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
You can
So
be
you're
agnostic.
saying like you wanna pull it back at some point, right?
Or just like, it's my video, it's my content, I own it, it's pointed to me, but I relied on a protocol or a DApp to upload it to FileCoin
Right.
and make that payment for
Yeah,
storage.
so that's
And maybe
the-
they go out of business,
Yeah.
Yeah,
then
so
nobody makes those
that's the
payments
beauty.
anymore.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
beauty with the CID is always the same, so you can download your own stuff back again and then put it somewhere else, wherever you choose.
Or you can use multiple providers too,
Yeah.
to where you can address with
That-
5 different providers like we do.
Yes.
And if one of the whole, like we address with web3.storage and with lighthouse.storage. So if web3.storage goes down, we're calling the CID, or our users are calling the CID. It doesn't matter who it's hosted by.
Yeah.
So that's
you're
called.
not wrong though, like.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah,
something.
third
that's,
parties can go down.
Yeah, that's any
Right.
company you
Yeah.
work with. You can't like, yeah, that's modern companies, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm
it's-
just, what's the, anti-fragile solution to that,
Yeah, and so my company is actually, we created a service that spins up a Kubernetes cluster for you. So you own the cluster, you can select your providers, and it'll run IPFS nodes on there. So when you upload files to it, it's your own private IPFS network that if you wanted them pushed to public IPFS or whatever, you can. It also backs up data to FileCoin automatically, and you can add as many nodes to that network as you want.
So yeah,
You know?
the value in that is that you can ask multiple people. And you
Yeah.
can't do that with Amazon right now. If I have an app
Right.
you're addressing to an S3 bucket, you can't address to multiple S3 buckets unless you want to waste resources.
Right.
Whereas now you can just address to like whoever is called racing gateways. So you list like 4 different gateways, whoever returns it the fastest is the one, great, cool.
Yeah.
And then you log that and then keep track of who's the best gateway is.
Yeah. So something we've been kind of loosely talking about is like the serverless bazaar, where you basically, like to Logan's point, you can, our application open links addresses to multiple different providers, but we're gonna get back the same data every time.
Right.
And so that's kind of the really cool thing about it, is it really allows you to kind of be flexible and be resilient. Yeah.
What does the actual implementation of fetching data off FileCoin look like? 'Cause I had an issue with IPFS where we were building a project, and one of the challenges that we faced is that we were hosting the code for our project on IPFS, but we, IPFS works like a tree, right? You have to recurse to the tree to find where the data is, unless you know that specific spot on the tree where it is, and so the data is decentralized, but the pinning has to still be centralized, right? So is it the same thing with FileCoin, to where I'm storing it on this network and it's still like I have to like recurse to the tree to get that data? Can I set this pinning somewhere in a decentralized way, or how does that process work?
So I'll give my answer and then I want, actually, Angela, you just go ahead. You got it.
Storing it on FileCoin, I think that's the easiest way to look at it. Usually it's like a one-on-one relationship with the storage provider or the mini cloud or whatever you wanna call it. Stored once, right? But through programs or through your initiative, you store it on multiple locations, so that's the way it's getting stored as of today. To your point, if you wanna access a specific set of data directly, it will go through the indexers that are running on the network, so you can, contact the indexers on the network and then get your data directly that way.
So I contact the index of the network
Yes.
using
That's the same, it's a CID.
CID, okay. And that performance, like what does that like look like in real time usage? Like let's say I'm hosting code for a web page, just arbitrarily.
You wanna do real-time data access on FileCoin, that's what you're asking.
Yeah, is that reasonable for real time access or not?
Right now, you need IPFS for that, that's the hot warm solution in front of FileCoin. See FileCoin as an archival solution of data, of massive data, that's why the scale of the network is so big, but it's not hot data.
I see, so it's better for things where it does not need to be accessed often, but needs to be accessed occasionally,
Well,
so it's just like a backup.
It just depends on what system you're like. If your system requires hot data, then you're gonna need to use the protocol that fits that, right? So FileCoin isn't necessarily like your option. Like the hosting still is the same as it conventionally would be. Like if you have 1,000 users all around the world hitting a server, it's like you're gonna have problems there. You're gonna need to have a load balance solution for that. Like you're still gonna need to have that same solution using IPFS if if you have a big app that has a lot of users, right? Does that make sense?
That makes sense, okay.
Yeah. So like if if it's something light, like a little tiny web page, then IPFS is great, because it's like, you know, it's like in terms of optimize, you only need a few servers around the world to run that. Whereas if you're running something heavy like a video storage platform and you're running it on IPFS, the infrastructure is the same as it would be without IPFS, kind of, right? You probably need a lot more infrastructure for IPFS, right?
Yeah, a little bit more.
Right? Just because you got hashing, if you're running FileCoin, then you have to prove everything, then it's really a lot. So IPFS is a way to like protect the data that we're running, and it's like, it's a whole new paradigm shift, because once you figure out how to do it, it's like, okay, everything changes. And so, but you still have to figure out hosting and load balancing and everything.
Yeah, totally. And also, yeah, I've got a FileCoin slide coming up next. We're kind of talking about IPFS kind of in a limited context here, so I'm glad we got to the FileCoin part already, before. But because really this, like Logan said, you can use IPFS separately. You can do some stuff on FileCoin, which does use IPFS. But really, like the stack is what's like very, 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 very exciting. Is there's so many different projects under the Protocol Labs umbrella that are building off of the verifiable data, like retrieval networks. You mentioned indexing. There's the storage, and so I'll just skip through to my next slide. FileCoin is essentially commoditizing this verifiable storage, and so that's what you think of it as like a crypto-powered decentralized storage network. I think we pretty much talked a lot about what I was planning on saying anyway, but essentially the mission for FileCoin is to protect and store humanity's most important information, and that was really like the initial use case and like the initial user base, and then from there it's grown like crazy to tons and tons of different applications and tons of different like commercial applications, and they also, so like I mentioned, they're building all kinds of projects on top to make the archival storage more useful, and to so for example on the far left they just launched the FileCoin virtual machine, so now it's EVM compatible, so you can launch smart contracts directly on FileCoin. And then I mentioned retrieval. There's the FileCoin Saturn network, which is a global incentivized retrieval network for FileCoin data. So yeah, when you take each piece out of context, it makes a little bit less sense than when you take them all together as the full stack. And the full stack is really what, you can use the different pieces of course, but the full stack is also what makes it really powerful.
Is FileCoin analogous to storage or SIA? I mean, obviously there's different features, and I'm sure you'd say FileCoin's the best of the three, but is the same spot on this total stack?
They have like 95%, 96% market share, I know for sure. And in terms of scale, in just like 2 years, FileCoin grew to about 1% of all global cloud capacity. So that's from my perspective. I don't know, Angelo, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, it's the massive scale that FileCoin can handle compared to the competitors, or whatever you want to call it. That's what makes it strong and makes it a very good archival tier at that point. And we've been throwing petabytes and petabytes of storage against it, and we're just going at it. We're at, what is it, 13 or 14 exabyte right now?
I think 15.96. I just got that number. Yeah.
And it keeps climbing and climbing.
Yeah.
It was close to 19, I think, like last month.
Oh really? Yeah. Yeah. This was just from this last NRES meeting.
And how distributed is that? Is that one of the?
So if you look at I know those charts too, by chance I see them a lot. The green part, I think that's the Fill Plus data, which is replicated 5 times over the network. And you see that that's growing the most because we're focusing on actual data, while the blue part is more of the committed capacity part, which is telling, look, this is the kind of capacity that we have that can be filled, and it's kind of for the security of the network. So you see that they're like the blue one is staying the same, which is very important, and the green one is growing, which is the actual data being stored at this point.
Yeah, and also just to add, FileCoin Plus is like the sort of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's sort of like the commercial enterprise version of FileCoin. So for companies who want to feel more comfortable about using this new storage platform, that's 98% cheaper than AWS S3. Then they would use FileCoin Plus, and because there's deals with those storage providers that I believe they have like SLAs and everything in place. Or
I think I'll take that apart a little bit. So FileCoin Plus is the extra incentive layer, let's put it that way, to make it very affordable for anybody to store data on FileCoin. What FileCoin Plus actually does is everything is based on proof of work, let's put it that way, right? So there is a certain amount of power that you have in a network based on the amount of storage that you're proving to the network. Well, if you're storing actual data, FileCoin Plus will 10x your view on the network. That means that if you're storing 100 terabytes, that will look like 1 petabyte on chain. So you're earning block rewards over that 1 petabyte instead of over the 100 terabytes, which makes it very interesting for the storage provider to do because you're earning 10x the block rewards at that point, which makes it very interesting for clients to go through the verifying process to store that actual data because they don't need to pay anything at this point because of that.
Is it, FileCoin is proof of work?
Well, proof of storage, it's like proof of work is what most people know, but it's proof of storage, that's what they call it. But the proving part is still you're putting in the work with the GPUs and the proving all the
So what is the proof of system look like?
It's very
So, yeah,
resource intensive.
I don't know if you're getting into that in a little
No,
bit.
no, no.
Okay, that's gonna take a little bit longer than 2 minutes. but-
Sealing data?
Yeah, so,
Supercomputers, basically.
what I can do once finished doing the presentation, I can pull up a chart on the entire sealing pipeline from a storage provider perspective, and I can explain that to you. How that works, you're right on.
What the storage proof? No, so I guess the question I'm getting at is you kind of said it's proof of work that you're showing that you store the files, but like, I can hash a file, I can do a checksum or something like that, but what I'm trying to get at is kind of like, it's proof of work, not really, like, is it proof of stake, am I making an attestation of something here?
Yeah,
Or
so-
what
We call
is
it
that
proof of
actual-
storage because it's actually both when you look at it from a storage provider perspective. Because what's happening is that when you're as a client storing data at a storage provider, that storage provider ingests that data, it was gonna prep that data to store it on FileCoin, right? It creates proof for it, makes it verifiable, makes it that the blockchain can verify it every day, every 24 hours. And that data goes through a sealing pipeline that takes a couple of hours before it's ready. That's the work, right? Then storing it on FileCoin as that storage provider, he needs to put up collateral, which is the staking part. And that collateral is kind of saying, I'm putting up this kind of money to make sure that your data is being kept safe. Does that make sense?
So it's like proof of stake, but you're attesting that it's correct, and then who checks that you didn't modify the file?
That's the
The network.
chain, and also based on IPFS CID, that CID never changes, so it makes it immutable. If you change anything on the data's not valid anymore.
I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
proof
the
of,
CID changes, right?
proof of storage because it's a storage network.
Yeah, and also the encryption, I think the encryption scheme to prep it for sealing is like if you tried to run that on your computer, could take like a year.
It will
or
burn
something.
out on your end,
Yeah, it
you
would,
need enterprise
like,
grade
Yeah,
stuff.
you need basically a supercomputer to
Like a RAID
to
zero.
do the encryption, yeah, just for sealing, and then every 24 hours, there's other proofs that are a little bit less intensive than the initial one, that, again, it's just like proof of work on Bitcoin. You got all these people doing these puzzles, solving these puzzles
Alright,
all
but
the time.
what are those proofs? Like, I'm not just solving arbitrary puzzles here. am
They're
I?
proofs. Well, yeah, the proofs are basically,
They're hashes of data. You need to go
Exactly.
check and make sure that this data is authentic. You need to go
Yes.
actually and check and look at the bits. You know, it's,
look at the bits.
My understanding is that it's a zero knowledge proof.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
that's the actual words
Right.
of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what it does is, look, every sector is 32 gig or 64 gig on a storage provider. Most people do 32 gig because that's the easiest to manage on the entire infrastructure. If you have petabytes of storage on your system sitting there, that means thousands and thousands of 32 gig sectors, right? During that process of that check every day, what your system does is it will take random bits of every 32 gig sector, computes a hash over it, then goes to the next sector and does that all over all the 1,000 sectors, and then all together it will create a proof of all those different hashes, push that to the blockchain, and the blockchain will check if you, within that half-hour window, have proven that your data is still intact and still unchanged, and then everything just is fine. If that doesn't happen within that half hour, you get penalized.
So in the half hour, you're basically checking random bits, you get the hash too, and then you're checking that it doesn't violate given the history of the chain.
Yes, there cannot be any violation on the data.
Yeah.
Any violation of data.
Yeah, so other other storage providers are doing those proofs too, and checking against each other to make sure that they match.
Yeah.
And if you're the first one, I believe, if you're the first one to submit that proof, that the confirmation, basically, you get that block reward as a storage provider. So storage providers get paid for storing data, and you also get paid for validating blocks, just like
Yeah, you're
Does that
storing it
mean
about.
because of the computing power required for that encryption, does that mean that it's very centralized, only like big mining firms, you know, Bitcoin that are, you know, control 50% of the hash rate? There's
No, I feel like everybody has these freaking massive supercomputers. They're not.
I
It's,
can tell you around more on the spec if you want to. There is around almost 4,000 storage providers right now, I think, in the network. All 4,000 are running at least some AMD APICs with enterprise grade NVMe, with like high-end, multiple thousands of cores CUDA. And the part on the ceiling pipeline is very heavy on memory and CPU.
GPU.
No, CPU, the first part, and then there is the proving part and the calculation part in the end, which is GPU intensive. And then the proofing part that happens every half hour is very GPU intensive and disk intensive. So you need a decent setup, right? I can show you my setup that I'm running in Brussels if you want to.
There's like 4,000 or more.
There's like 4,000 people, and that's how we distribute everything, right? So.
Alright, strict question, so then, like with Bitcoin mining, electricity costs, etc., you can kind of arrive at a point where miners are gonna be losing money if the price, market price isn't a certain amount. Given that FileCoin, you know, it's gone from $300 down to, you know, $5.
of course.
And you know, it's what, 400 million tokens, gonna go up to 2 billion. You know, let's say there's another bear market, you know, well, maybe we're getting out of one, maybe not. Is there a price where these expensive setups need to maintain so that the rewards they realistically earn are realistically worth keeping those machines on?
I do know that number because I did the all ROI calculator
Yeah.
for a lot of them. It depends on the scale, right? That's one thing,
Sure.
right? Look at Amazon, they're not profitable because they're small, right? Like, because they're big. It's the same thing for a storage provider. Depending on how much you're providing to the network, of course, impacts your revenue model. So to ballpark it a little bit, I think the price for, if you're at a certain scale, let's say 50 petabyte or higher, you'll be like at $3 that it should be at, right? That's ideal based on, you know, block rewards and that you get in and everything. Now, a lot of conversations happening right now that, you know, because of the incentive model, like you just said, right, is that people are looking into charging for their storage, because it's a normal evolution in the network, right? Now, most clients are storing data to prove utility, it's incentivized by block rewards, but if, like you're saying, that cannot go on forever. So we'll have a mix of both at a certain point, and then further along, you will have just, that mix will still be valid or still available, but that will just change. It will be less block rewards, more charging for storage, but that's going to be over the next years, in my opinion. But there is a model for it to make sure that
So
it's.
ballpark about $3 if FileCoin just below that.
That's for 50 petabytes though, that's a whole
Yeah.
data center almost.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And so for a smaller mom and pop kind of
So I
provider,
run my
double
setup
that?
pretty small, I guess it's like 2 petabyte or something like that. I don't know if that's small, but it's still a lot of storage, I can assure you that. It's even lower, you can even go lower depending on how scrappy you are, so
No.
depending on
Yeah.
how you structure it. But if you go buy everything brand new through a leasing contract, whatever, with Dell, HP or whatever, Supermicro, whatever you wanna do, depending on scale, yeah, that number looks different for you. I can show you the ROI calculator in a little bit. You can just go to filecoin.eu, you can play around with it, how that looks for you. Also depending on that incentive model, on Phil Plus, if you wanna figure that out.
If they're gonna move to a model where you charge for storage, aren't you then worried about the potential if you wouldn't wanna run up against like Felicia from AWS or similar services?
That's what we're 100%.
Exactly. You wanna run against them. Yeah.
No, I mean, you wanna be cheaper than them if it's the.
Well, actually, I always disagree with my colleagues
Okay.
because they say the same things. I always say we need to be at the same price point because we're offering a lot more.
Right.
We're offering content addressable, immutable, replicated storage for the same price that Glacier does in one location.
It's more redundant.
So you get a lot more for your buck if you're.
And just a question, I work in the finance industry, so I deal with a lot of like, okay, the traditional finance industry.
Yeah.
So, how do you make sure that, all right, you're storing it in 5 separate nodes, how do you make sure those nodes are distributed broadly and not all, say, within 50
Okay,
mile
so
radius?
we have an internal validation law that checks that. So if you're running with the incentive model, we force that the replicas to be stored outside of the country once at least, so that's definitely different data center setup. Definitely twice out of any city, so those rules are there for a reason. The validation law will check that. And what it makes it that way is that you're always talking to data centers that have 100% unique setup, which is also the attack surface is off the scale, right? If you want to hack 5 data centers distributed over countries which have a completely different setup, well, I mean, good luck for that hacker to bring down all 5 replicas, or even I see people do 10 replicas even, so it makes it very robust.
Yeah, there's usually an off-chain backup
Yeah.
also.
That, yeah, still that.
But are all these data centers running the same processors? Are they all running AMDs?
They're all running different.
Or are they running ARMs
Depends.
or RISC-V?
Who knows? Who cares?
No, anymore.
Oh, I guess it's all, we know what it is.
I know what it
It's
is.
x86 for sure.
So for certain process, you needed certain specific types of CPUs or GPUs, right? Best is AMD to run the ceiling pipeline, but on the data access part, for instance, I run it on VMware, which is way different than, somebody can run it in Docker, or somebody can run it in bare metal on AMD or Intel. For instance, I have a Fortinet firewall in front of it with IPS and DDoS protection, and other people have a Palo Alto, some people do advanced IP tables, so you have a mix of so many different things that, look, I come from a security background from Fortinet. I can assure you it's already hard enough to get through one of those, so if you want to penetrate 10 of them, or 5 even, it's going to be tough. I mean, specifically, they're all different, and even looking at the software stack, because that's probably your next question, is all the same software, which is also not the case. A lot of people, we have different, we have Lotus implementation, we have a Venus implementation, we have a Rust implementation, so it's also different software accessing it.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say hardware is a bit easier to come at it from, because like AMD could just insert another chiplet in there, all their chips, and it could wait until it sees some message come across the bus from the internet and I don't know, catch fire. That's not a very, that's more of like a DOS attack.
Yeah,
where it just catches fire on the chip, but or it could just start manipulating data.
They do that all the time. There's those weird things in processor all the time. Intel be turning weird shit on all the time. We'd be mad.
I mean,
It's one thing to answer what the question about like ceiling and how expensive. I know like last year we were doing the numbers of like, okay, how much does it take to get like a big, service or a small service going on FileCoin? And it was like 15, maybe, it was 10, 15 grand if you were even buying used stuff. And this year, AMD has come out with their new AM5 stuff, and it's like, I'm sure that price, I haven't done the numbers, but I'm sure it's a lot less than it was.
Proofs are being optimized right now, and you can run your ceiling pipeline on less hardware. It's better now. You can almost go to like a whole storage provider in a box, almost putting it together, but still look at this cost what it is cost, right?
Exactly.
No matter where you go, AWS maybe gets a better price from WD or from Seagate or whatever, but the disk is still, pricey on that, so you still need to store it. FileCoin has that incentive layer to offset that cost, so it does help. I mean, that makes it interesting for the client to store it on that part.
I had another. Can you delete from FileCoin? With it, because the CID, it's a hack.
Why would you ask that?
Dreaded
Sorry.
Well, I want to say, hey guys, you don't need to store this anymore. Stop working on it.
I'm from Belgium, so I'm really focused on GDPR GDPR, so this is the exact question that I
That's
asked before
right to
I
be
started
forgotten,
at
right?
Protocol Labs.
That's harder deleting.
Yes,
I
so-
guess I was saying
We have-
relinquishing.
There's a lot of things to make sure something is stored. Now we need to figure out of something to make sure that, okay, you're not storing that anymore.
What you can, what you can do is first you can deny access to it, which will, for a lot of those compliancy methods is enough, right? But you can also terminate data on FileCoin. That's a new feature, like it's not a new feature, it's been around for a while, but you can terminate and delete the entire sector. You can obfuscate access, and you also have the part where you can just say, well, I won't allow you access anymore, and I'll just wait till the deal duration is over, because deal durations are typically 540 days, and then the data automatically gets deleted based on your policy.
Okay.
That's probably the cheapest way to do it, right?
Yeah, that's the cheapest way to do
Yeah.
it.
Just wait for the.
Like if you, like when we were just talking about the incentive layer, is that if you terminate it, you're saying to the network, hey, I'm terminating this data because I feel like I wanna terminate it, and the blockchain will say, well, that's fine, but you'll have to pay a fee, and that comes out of the storage.
There's a system that does that.
So when you're saving something from like Polygon, I'm assuming there's some kind of bridge for the data?
I think there's a bridge for it.
Okay,
I think
for
there-
most
I
like
don't, I'm not, I've heard.
EVM type,
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
EVM
You can use, like-
compatible, right?
You can use Web3 origin or something.
Oh, yeah.
Alright,
for
so
sure,
then
yeah, yeah.
what about, you know, a big problem now, you talked earlier about, you know, like the next 80 years, we're walking into a surveillance dragnet, so the whole lunar punk versus solar punk, and especially, you know, most EVM addresses, your entire history is public, your identity is public. If you have associated it with, let's say, social media account where you've attached credentials, or you've doxed yourself, and then you're uploading videos, content, and then there's this bridge over to FileCoin. Can the FileCoin data provider or data storage providers see, is there a link to that like ETH address identity, and then could that be used to censor, let's say you don't agree with the politics of the person who's storing their, you know, blog content?
Oh, yeah.
Can you then, as a provider, is there a traceability not only for you as a storage provider, but really ultimately governments, regulatory agencies who would then also use that pass-through method to just kind of figure out everything? I know the data is encrypted once it's kind of at rest, but can you see the identity of the incoming source of that? And
Yeah, so like you always see the source client, which is the wallet address.
Right.
And if it's, there is a wallet converter for Ethereum wallets, so you could, you know, I guess you can figure that out. But to give you an idea, like we're focusing on like, for instance, research data, right? And the researchers, what they want is they want to store data, and from the second data leaves their infrastructure or notebook, they want to know what's happening with it, because it's very important that it never changes. So what they do is, oh, we'll put it on IPFS, right? The CID makes it immutable, you always know that it's the right data, then it goes into FileCoin. Same thing, new CID, blockchain checks it, and then, but you need to figure that out yourself. Nobody's gonna tell you the entire trace of what that is, so people are developing software right now to visualize that really quickly for you, to figure that out for you, so you as a client don't need to go through, traverse the entire, you know, IPFS world and the blockchain and all that for you. And I can imagine that if it's coming from a network outside of FileCoin, people will develop that as well. So does that make sense?
so there is a, like, I don't know if you've seen like the past couple of weeks, there's been these hearings with Matt Taibbi and some other people, the Twitter files, where it's been revealed that there's been coordination between government and private industry to basically flag, censor, and deplatform certain individuals sharing certain content, whether you agree or disagree with the content's relevant. Point is, it's a mechanism by which a governing authority can see the origin of this data and censor or repress it, or by just not making anything illegal, but they just lean on the private company. They then lean on the individual storage providers and saying, we've decided that's
No, you
hateful,
can't.
misinformation, hate speech, whatever bullshit.
No, the thing is,
And-
there's a good example with the war in Ukraine, for instance.
Yeah,
I know
okay.
the FileCoin network is storing all the videos and text around it.
Right.
Once it's stored on FileCoin or on IPFS, the CID makes sure that it never changes, so you know it's there, right? And by accessing it, you become an IPFS node at that point too, because you cache it. So if anybody who reads it, all of a sudden, if 1,000 people read it, that file exists 1,000 times, which is unchangeable because of the CID. And then when somebody wants to delete it, that's impossible. Even accessing it would just create a copy at that point. But what I'm getting at is that in that case, if somebody would tell, a platform to delete it, it's still okay. Let's say the platform points it at a certain, it can be a file, it's a CID at that point. So even if the entire company would go away, or they will like force them not to reveal that content anymore, that CID is still available, and you personally can still access it and knowing it's the original data.
That's a great example. So, especially here in the West, Russia is seen as the ultimate bad guy, and if you question that, you're a traitor forever and ever, and you die. And so there are some sources from within Russia that might have some criticism of what's going on from a socially unacceptable point of view, and they might choose to upload some of this video or whatever their content. And like we've seen even in the past year, like decentralized exchanges like Matcha, which is powered by OX, just cut off any incoming requests from Russia. Like, I don't know how we're decentralized if we're gonna say, if you're a human on this side of this arbitrary line, then you can't exist or whatever.
It's more for legal and compliance reasons.
Well, I mean, that's the example of, soft persuasion by governments that, lean on and get the desired censorous effect without actually making a law. And so can that apply
you're really
to?
blocking access to the front end, right?
Right, so can I,
smart
if,
contracts are always on chain.
but if I'm in Russia and I'm uploading videos, hey, this is in my
wouldn't
backyard,
see it
can
directly
a
as
storage
a-
provider say, hey, we don't wanna host that propaganda?
Definitely, like a
Yes, they
storage,
can.
yeah, a storage provider, they have to abide by laws, right? So like, the awesome thing about IPFS is like, you can go intermediaries, you can go to people who don't follow laws, like that's the great thing, but like, they still are a service provider. If the government, so like, we have this problem if you're like hosting content on IPFS. Nobody can like, it's not a good idea to go start saving illegal prohibited content on IPFS because like, it's still prohibited content. So if you try to send that to a service provider, the service provider is gonna get a notice from the government saying, hey, you've got content here, you need to like stop this. And so, so it's, you follow under the same laws, it's just the circumstances are a whole lot better on IPFS than they would be in a centralized system.
Well, and that's the thing, if we could trust governments, then we wouldn't need this
Yeah.
blockchain stuff.
Yeah, well,
there's,
and so,
there's also
Let's get down to it.
mixed nets are getting better, just as the ways to analyze the networks are getting better, mixed nets are also getting better. Ways to obfuscate
The source
where it
of the
came
data so
from.
that, and it's encrypted
Basically,
once it hits it, so
yeah,
if
mixed
you don't know
nets
the
are-
source location,
They're
then.
trying to make all traffic look like the same
Yeah, right.
traffic, right? So
And then obviously
it's
if you're
pretty
still uploading illegal stuff, then there are ways to get you from the other side, but it just wouldn't
Yeah.
be.
yeah, I mean, and my understanding is like with the IPFS public network, there's like hundreds of thousands of nodes, if not close to 1 million nodes. And so if you're in Russia, is that
Like, who
close?
knows?
If-
There's
who
a
knows?
lot,
It's
like-
pure-
It's hard to know,
Yeah.
right? But the point is, if you're in Russia and you upload something, or you're trying to retrieve something, you
Right.
can do that because you're running a node on your computer, and you just talk to those other nodes.
I
And
guess
so,
it's the storage providers that may be the ones that say, we choose to not host
sure,
content
but
from
those
this geographic
those
region.
IPFS nodes in that public network aren't always a FileCoin storage provider. It could just be you with
Yeah.
your computer.
IPFS and FileCoin are two different networks.
Right,
Yeah,
sure.
So you can. So another great example, actually, the government of Iran
Yeah.
blocked Wikipedia
Great
for the
example.
whole country.
Right.
And so IPFS has had Wikipedia. I threw this in here because I feel like this is super important. Safeguarding humanity's most important data. So they have all the Wikipedia saved on the IPFS public network. And so when Iran shut it off, all the citizens could still access it through IPFS. And so that's a really, really powerful mechanism. But they had to be running their own nodes, right, locally.
Right.
They weren't contacting like they didn't have like their own FileCoin storage provider.
There's some browsers nowadays that support IPFS, like the
Great.
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that's I had that here. Yeah, there's 5 browsers with IPFS support and 3 with native support.
So someone in Iran could go to Brave, if they could get Brave on their computer.
Yeah.
And then boom, just like a Wikipedia
And they
through
just like
IPFS.
browsing the internet.
Can't you use a VPN to get bypass the
Yeah,
Iran
probably,
firewall?
but not everybody's that tech savvy to go
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah,
Well, no, I mean,
You have to be
VPNs,
paying for a VPN, so like there's a lot of people who
there's
are
some
needing
free
it.
ones, they collect your data, but,
Yeah, exactly. That's the other
so
thing.
you can go down
Do
the
you-
break with it.
Do you want a centralized party to obfuscate your communication? Do you want to be using IPFS?
Yeah.
Like that's your question.
I do wanna add something to that, is like, I think the video part is a good example. Try not to see it as a video file, but see it as a unique identifier. I think that's very important, because on IPFS, you're not going to the content, you're going to the identifier, and that identifier will give you the content, which is way different.
And if only somebody was gonna make a video player that was based on content IDs.
If you guys, if anybody wants to work with video, come talk to this guy. He's gonna love to talk to you.
Hey, let me talk to you later.
Okay.
So it'll just be like, it doesn't matter where it comes from.
Cool.
It'll just be like this CID.
Well, yeah, so that's what I had. My plan was to basically get everyone talking, so I succeeded.
Good job.
Slack group, meetup group, if you guys didn't get it already, that QR code should work. So if you guys want to quickly swipe that. But that's it. Thanks.
Thank you,
I
Alex.
was holding up the whole presentation for a second.
I know.
I thought we were holding up the whole presentation for a second.
Oh, no. He killed the last 5 slides because we talked so much.
No, it's perfect.
So the logo is decided?
Leave this up for, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
They voted on it.
Hey, how many people park here? Does anyone need parking validation?
Oh, yeah.
In the garage.
I do.
1, 2, 3, 3.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got yours? Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, of course.
That's like what I specialize in.
What's your comment?
But now we're
Okay.
Everyone's against it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like,
But it's
we're not
based
sitting
on
here saying this is all
No, I mean, it's a huge advancement. AWS will just turn you off. and
Wait,
you're done.
They're some FileCoin retrieval networks that they're commoditizing already. And then eventually,
Yes.
it's gonna be safer concepts.
So it seems odd.
I mean, what I worry about is the original
There was
promise of
also
the internet
another
was
file
that we do all these things, and we saw the
So I guess the extent files might have to
services
read up
for
for
the
it.
choke points, but now we're all slaves again to other people's agendas. And are we just going to, again, I like that, meteor guide, are we just gonna go into that? And we're in the promising idealistic phase right now. But then as more and more centralized service providers come online, who are worried about take down, shut down.
Yeah, I know.
So now like, are we just gonna end up in the same?
That's a fair question.
Alright, guys. Remember,
Yeah, so yeah, we got a demo now from Dante.
The consensus one coming up too. That's gonna be. Yeah. I think it's like April.
And also,
I don't know, how
there's other topics that we're gonna discuss too, we can do that. Kinda had a question for everybody.
Gonna do the closing party before like.
Yeah, I wanted to
in
see
some
like,
capacity
who
officially.
here has like,
Hey Ken, we still got another demo.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good, you're good.
who here has like used IPFS in any capacity?
I'm gonna put a cat picture up there.
Okay,
Good, that's what it's meant.
yeah,
I'll try to,
okay, that's helpful.
I don't know how to retrieve it now, but
Yeah,
I
I
did
mean,
it somewhere.
performance-wise, that's not.
Maybe another question too. So this presentation is gonna be basically an overview of some of the underlying aspects of IPFS. And then I was gonna look at setting up, a node just on your computer. Like, is that interesting to people? Do you wanna know more about how IPFS kind of works as a network under the scenes, or do you guys have another topic that you want to discuss more?
I feel like we covered some of it, so maybe cover the parts we didn't cover.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I
Okay.
found it interesting.
Yeah, okay, cool, yeah, I think it's interesting too, because basically what we're talking about is essentially a new version of the internet, right? How nodes talk to each other on the internet. So just quickly, so IPFS and libp2p, those are two different distinct things, but IPFS is a big part of libp2p. libp2p is a library. Oh, thank you. Gotcha. Yeah, libp2p is a library that is probably what, if you're building something, probably that's the system that you're going to use, because It contains a lot of other tools along with IPFS that are really useful, like IPNS, interplanetary naming system, and a bunch of other tools that are useful. So libp2p kind of came out of IPFS and is a little bit broader. So there's a distinction.
Yeah, a bunch of tools, just sorry to interrupt, a bunch of tools use libp2p, like Ethereum uses libp2p, what else? Like
Polkadot, like everything. All the majors.
Polkadot, Bitcoin, I mean, everybody uses
Most-
it.
no,
I don't think Bitcoin does.
No, no.
I think.
Not anymore, no. They did back in the day.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
they used well, it was, back then it was just IPFS. Okay, yeah, so content addressing versus location addressing. This is kind of one of the big aspects of IPFS in general. You know, on the left, you have the traditional client-server model. We all use this every day. You know, you've got a website hosted on a server somewhere. You go to hit that website, youtube.com, it hits the server. The youtube.com part, the domain name, you know, travels from DNS, uses DNS to find out what the IP address of that server is, and then, you know, it'll return the content that you want. On IPFS, you're not asking the network for, basically, you're not inserting a domain name and, you know, asking for to talk to a specific server. You're using that CID, the content ID, and you're basically just asking the whole network, hey, does anybody have this content, right? So you're not asking a specific server, you're asking the whole network. Really, you're asking your peers. We'll look a little bit more into this. So again, in location addressing, you know, you've got Spotify.com, Google.com, NASA. Each one corresponds to an IP address. So if you've got nasa.gov/ some file, it's going to eventually end up at this IP address, and you know, so you're actually asking for a location when you go from like a .com, usually. So that's kind of, again, the traditional model. IPFS, again, this represents like two nodes have one file, another two nodes are storing another file. You know, each node can be storing all kinds of different files, and you can also be a provider for that file for other peers. So totally different, you know, again, that file only existed on that server in the traditional model. Now this file can exist like all throughout the network in a bunch of different places. So totally, yeah, you know, different kind of, yeah.
When I've tried to use like Brave to look at an IPFS stored website, it takes forever to load because it's,
can.
yeah, the latency
Yeah.
is like big.
So-
Are there providers then that somehow speed that up so it has the
Yeah.
look and
there-
feel of a traditional
Yes.
site too?
Yes, so there's pinning services that will, I think, Firebase, or what is it? Yeah.
Pinata, so the
Pinata, yeah, there's different providers that will make sure that basically more DHTs are updated, or DHT portals, DHT nodes are updated so that the network knows where that file is being provided.
Knows where it is, it just get it there fastest, it's like,
Yeah.
so, yeah, like, if you're hosting a computer on just a normal internet connection, if you're hosting a file, sorry, it's like,
Yeah.
there's a bottleneck there,
So it might take forever for you because geographically you're just not close to where that file is. Maybe, basically, like IPFS is way more efficient than traditional internet at scale when files are being requested a lot by the network, right? So if you've got some file that, you know, everybody's requesting, that's kind of when IPFS is the most efficient. If it's, you know, a file that nobody really requests very often, yeah, you might have to wait a little bit. Eventually it should pop up. It can take a while though.
Retrieval times have been like going down a lot, like thanks to the guys like you, like getting the retrieval times down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
You should also look at it a little bit like, how is your data important, right? If you're hosting a website on the internet, you're hosting it, like you said, on your computer, you're not really valuing your access to your website you build, right? But if it's a high-profile website you want to host, you host it somewhere on, I don't know what cloud you're hosting it on nowadays, but if you do it on IPFS, it's the same way. If you're just hosting it on one node, choose that node well, right? And based on access from somebody else, it gets distributed all over the world, or you can already pre-distribute it by pinning it on different locations, and then your access time is super fast. There's no.
Right.
So
Is
it
that, do
depends
you
on how
lose
set it up.
cost savings the more, is there like a threshold, or if you have 10 regional parts of the world, then it's the same cost, is no longer cost
I think
savings?
It's modern web development, right? So like,
Similar, yeah.
right, so if like, just like to bring you to the real world, like a lot of people will be like, oh, open internet, open Web3, like it's all about getting rid of the big guys. And it's like, it's more you're better together. Like if you're trying to host something and you want 1 million people to be able to see it, where do you go today to do that? You go to Amazon. And like, I'm hosting a few IPFS apps. Okay, they're running IPFS. I'm supposed to be Web3. Where do I host them? I host them on Amazon. Because Amazon's the cheapest. My cloud is cheaper than probably most people's. It's like, energy-wise, like it's all about physics. Like how much energy is your system running? Well, even if you're running on Amazon, it can be really low, no matter who your provider is. It can, you know, as long as you're smart. And so, you know, using Amazon's great. Using Google, great. Whoever you want to use, 10 out of 10. But whenever Amazon goes down, is your system, can you move it to a different one easily and still run it? That's the question. And so like, you have to build like modularly and
Yeah, I see a lot of those models, like hybrid models. Seen a lot of people hosting it, for instance, in their own data centers, spread out over the world, and they have like a backup IPFS node running in AWS to back it up in somewhere else. I don't know. It's a mix of. I don't see Web3 existing without Web2 in the future. That's just not happening. But Web2 will definitely need to change, because you can see that, you know, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they're even reaching out directly to us to have that conversation on how do we, you know, educate our Web3, because everybody has a Web3 team, right? They all have it. You can like, maybe they won't admit to it, but I can assure you they have it. And they're all reaching out to these bigger crypto players or blockchain players to have that conversation on how is Web2 and Web3 is gonna look like in the future. Because they, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like people from PL, like I've had this conversation with people from PL. I'm like, oh, you know, that's not Web3 enough, and they're like, Logan, there's no such thing as Web3. It's really like, is it open? Is like with the data you're looking at, is it open data? Is it open source? Like, so it's more about the open web. It's like, that was a big realization for me. I didn't really realize that until recently. It's like, Web3, who knows what that is? What's Jack Dorsey's company? What is that called?
Blue Sky.
Web5.
Web5, yeah. It's like, who came up with that? Who was skipping force?
It's Web2 plus Web3.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's how I
There
got to
you go.
Web5.
That's a good answer. I see always Web2 and a half,
I don't know.
so maybe I should go for
I like
Or
the,
maybe it's Fibonacci webs. The next web is gonna be Web 8.
there's some really cool new, like I like Kubernetes, again, kind of like pretty traditional and like Docker containers. You can even set up different Kubernetes nodes on different hosting providers around the world, and they can all, you know, be load balanced for the same network. And now there's like, I think there's really cool, basically similar to Docker containers and Kubernetes nodes that are all WebAssembly based, which is really cool. So like WebAssembly, I think WebAssembly, FileCoin virtual machine that talks to Ethereum, or any EVM chain, like that is going to be really interesting. So yeah, this, you know, the
Is
whole
that live?
Yes, yeah, all of it. Yeah, there's
Some Pi Day, like 2 days ago, 3 days ago.
Oh, cool.
Like literally.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
actually one
FE.
thing that I want to add, like on the slides you saw FEM, which right is the smart contract way of doing on FileCoin, the same way as Ethereum does. And you mentioned, I think, the Saturn network, which is the CDN network. The third player that I'm missing there is the compute over data part, the Backlio team, because FileCoin is into moving, like, we have this vast amount of data everywhere, right? And then what we want to do with compute over data is that you can, like, do computation locally on the data, like at the data
Edge.
edge. And the big difference there is like in the cloud, you need to move it all together, which is very expensive to move it, just the egress and moving it between zones or whatever you want to do with your data, move it together, do that computation. And then when you have that data coming out of that computation, you need to move that again, which is also costly. While when we do compute over data on the FileCoin network, it's done locally, the result is kept locally, it's stored locally, and you just only see the actual result, which is minimal amount of like data moving around, so that
Yeah.
one should be added.
That's,
Like,
man,
Definitely, yeah.
that's like holy grail.
Yeah.
If we get to that point, which yeah, pretty
Yeah.
soon, I mean, yeah, there's no comparison between FileCoin to, traditional web. So distributed hash tables is a pretty interesting concept. First of all, IPFS, when we think about IPFS, there's IPFS, the public network, right? And then there's IPFS, like you can run your own private IPFS implementation, right? We could run our own private IPFS network that just, has everybody in this room. That doesn't necessarily talk to the main implementation of IPFS, right? If we were to do that, we would need our own distributed hash table, which is basically just a database that every node in the network has the same database. It's a key value store. I'll just read this. Distributed hash table is a method of mapping keys to their associated values. They are fundamentally databases of keys and value pairs that are split across the peers. Basically, every peer is supposed to have the same records is the ideal situation. In order to upload or retrieve data stored in IPFS, there must be a mapping of each node's peer ID, that's the key, and then the content identifier, that's the value. And the peer that the peer is storing, the DHT maintains this mapping of each CID with the peer ID of the nodes that are hosting. So DHT tells the network who has what files on the network, right? And so you think about, peer-to-peer network, I spin up a brand new IPFS node, and then I get all these peers. All of a sudden, my hash table is, like, let's say I request a file, or maybe I upload a file, and that puts a message out to all the other peers, hey, I have this file, right? And so all the nodes are basically doing these have-want communications all the time. I have this file, and not just I want this file, but maybe the peer I just talked to is looking for this file, right? So there's different algorithms, and we'll talk about those in a second, of kind of how these peers talk to each other. But the point is, they're storing this data on the DHT, which again, basically a database that every node has, and the idea is that eventually every peer in the network is going to have the same entries in that table, right? So that's the idea, and again, the main IPFS implementation is going to have its own DHT. If you started your own private implementation, it won't include any of those files on the main one. Yeah, again, this is pretty interesting. So just kind of looking at this flow, user request a CID, that kind of starts the process, starts with the request. You search your local node first for that CID. If you found it, great, you have the file. If not, you broadcast to the network this want have to all of the peers that you're already talking to. If you haven't received a have response yet, then you basically search the DHT for who may have that file, and you can actually, if there's an entry in the DHT that has the CID and the peer ID, I could go and contact that peer directly. Like maybe I'm not already peered with that node. I can just go and become a peer to that node, and if they have the file, then establish the connection or receive a have response, and then and then basically I'll eventually get the data. It also send a want block for CID to some peers in the session. Yeah, so if I have, let's see, add have sending peers to session, yep. So I add that peer to my session, send a want block to that peer, and then I'll get the data back. Yeah, if you don't get, for some reason the DHT is wrong or that peer is offline, you'll kind of get this idle loop, and that's where it can take a while. It'll keep searching through the network until it finds somebody with that file. Event,
times out.
or the request will time out. Yeah, so that's an option too. It's not 100% foolproof that you'll get a response.
I'm sorry, where did you get that,
That flow?
where the hell did you find that, where did you find that? Or did you make that yourself?
No. Usually I have a credit on here. Just Google.
Launchpad website, I think.
Yes.
Launchpad,
I think
okay.
so, it's on there.
I've never seen that and I wish I
I
had.
think it's here, actually, file base.
And Firebase has it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Cool. So yeah, so discovery algorithms, these are pretty interesting. There's again a couple of different ways that the IPFS nodes can kind of talk to each other in order to actually find the file that you're requesting. And I've talked about these before, but little quick refresher. So gossip sub is really one of the main ones. Every 1 second, each peer randomly selects 6 metadata only peers and sends them a list of recently seen messages. So this is, again, they're talking about gossip. It's called gossip because you're essentially saying, you're talking about what other peers have basically been asking for and what other peers have. So you're not necessarily regarding yourself, but you're just kind of picking random, a random set of peers and kind of gossiping about what they have. And if everybody's doing this all the time and it's random, eventually, hopefully, you get a mapping of who has what for everything that people are requesting in the network.
This like gossip sub is like if you wanted to like what do I use gossip sub for? Apparently, like a few years ago when they like first built this, it was like the best protocol for a chat service. So like gossip sub can get a message broadcasted throughout a whole network and like it's faster, it's like super efficient.
Can be, yeah. So gossip, that's like gossip, again, it's nice to subscribe to, like a channel or a topic, and we, I think one of these goes into that too. So these are just, okay, so there's metadata only peers and then there's full message peering. The metadata, again, might have just information about the network, about who's storing what, whereas there might be, peers that actually have the full data, storing the full data. Again, that's using gossip sub. So again, reading this, the peering degree is, we call it D, controls the trade-off between speed, reliability, resilience, and the efficiency of the network. The higher peering degree helps messages get delivered faster with a better chance of reaching all subscribers with less chance of any peer disrupting the network by leaving. However, a high peering degree also causes additional redundant copies of each message throughout the network, increasing the bandwidth. Yeah, so again, all of these discovery algorithms of how the peers talk to each other have, pluses and minuses to them. They kind of, each different algorithm are better for different use cases. And actually, if you look at pub sub, which I think pub sub is actually used for chat more, because your chat room becomes a topic that everybody subscribes to, right? So if I only care about the topics going on in this chat room, I can, basically subscribe to actions that happen there, and when an action, like event sourcing, when an action is published, because I'm subscribed, I get notified, so kind of like a webhook. So you can do this around different topics, and you know, maybe I don't want to sync everything in IPFS. I just care about these, you know, specific things. So that is another way to be more efficient about what you're syncing, what you're peering. Graph sync is, I think somebody brought this up earlier, you know, maybe I don't need the entire piece of a file. Maybe I'm just looking for a specific part of that file. If I actually know what, like maybe I just need a value that's stored on a form somewhere or something. I just need like these little bytes of a file. If I know that, I can call that CID directly and just sync maybe, you know, maybe I just need like this folder in this larger folder with all these files. So I can just call this CID and just sync this part of the graph. I don't need to sync the entire graph. So again, another way, another algorithm that you can implement just to be more efficient with what, you know, what data you're actually storing. Yeah, and again, also if, you know, because I only requested this piece, I'm only gonna be a provider for this piece, so maybe I'm geographically closer to somebody that's also requesting that. I can return this chunk to them, but they'll have to get the rest of the file or the folder or something from somebody else. But it, you know, can be more efficient. Yeah, okay. Installing, so let's try this live.
Does anybody run IPFS at home on their like computers? Anybody?
So you gotta connect to the Wi-Fi, or you gotta connect to my hotspot.
Do you run
I
a
like
storage
it.
node? Do you run like the petabyte server?
Do you
He
have?
run, yeah, not only a local node, which
Yeah.
is just like what I run. Okay,
Yeah,
he
swipe-
runs an
swipe
actual
over.
Lotus
That
node.
must be like
Yeah, just do a new terminal.
thousands of dollars of storage.
It's 2 petabytes.
It's Chrome.
2 petabytes, almost 2. That's
You're good.
$50,000.
Depends on where you bought your drives, right?
Well,
Is your drives used or they new?
well, for a 2 terabyte NVMe 980 Pro.
Okay, we're not talking
it's-
about SSD.
If you just
right?
go like this, you'll get the Windows.
These spinning racks.
Or if you swipe.
Most
I
FileCoin
use
is
for long-term storage.
Just do a new
it's
one.
all spinning the drives, and then for the ceiling pipeline is all enterprise NVMe. Those grows
if you have 2 petabytes of SSD, of NVMe SSD, you're Cloudflare.
Well, you could have petabytes of RAM, right?
Petabytes of RAM?
Yeah.
A petabyte of RAM?
I wanna know what your hardware.
Exactly, right.
If you, I'm trying to even think, I don't think that there's really many
You
computers
can
with
have,
petabytes.
there's computer configurations that exist that allow you to get a terabyte of RAM.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you
I
can
have
just
Kubo running on this.
NVMeify.
I didn't realize, I didn't see your message.
Okay, let's do
So
the
dense.
easy,
yeah.
let's
Or
do the
regular
easy
dense.
way. Hold on.
And then you get
I
some
just thought about
The only reason why you ever use a terabyte of RAM is for a RAM disk. You're using.
I use,
Or
my
SSD.
machines have 1 terabyte
What do you need?
memory.
Looking for.
Because else the ceiling pipeline wants.
Are you running a data center or something?
Definitely. No. If you didn't know, this is Angelo from PowerPoint Foundation. Or you're not even from PowerPoint Foundation.
No, I did this before I started working.
Okay,
Right.
so.
Yeah. Fortinet. You work for Fortinet.
I
Yeah.
used to work for 40 years.
Yeah. So most of it is all. By the way, I want to know what specific hardware do you use?
So-
I use I replace everything by what is it? It's the old IBM, the Toshiba ones.
Okay.
There used to be
What time you got?
HTST drives on IBM.
14.
Toshiba's
12
terabytes.
Alright,
No, we don't have 15 minutes.
Alright.
18. Oh, wow.
Cool guys, so we've got like 15 minutes left. I was gonna go through the process of installing Kubo, which is like basically a light node that you can run on your computer. I'm actually just gonna do the desktop version, which is, you know, if you're not familiar with like terminal command line stuff.
Or do you want me to use my Kubo node and just like pin a file or something?
No, I kinda wanna show the interface.
I feel like 95% of users on IPFS with nodes running are using the IPFS companion.
Yeah.
And so if anything, maybe download.
Companion's running right now, my node is running.
Oh, this companion app up here?
Right there, yeah, if you just click that.
Is this it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my node.
Okay.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, okay, cool. So like, this is kind of what you'll get either if you run Kubo or if you download a DMG or a exe file of the desktop version. You get this cool interface that will show you all the files that you pinned or that you uploaded. You can see the peers on the network. So we just connected to the network.
This would be
It's pretty cool. I'll show you guys a couple other things that you can. So yeah, this actually shows you bandwidth.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I have to interrupt.
Sure.
So the guy who works on this, his name is Russell Dempsey. If anybody loves UI stuff and they work at all with React, anything UI, you can go to GitHub and help Russell or Sergeant Pookie is his name on GitHub. You can help this guy with a ton of the problems with this thing. And so the IPFS desktop, it is like 4 or 5 years old, and it's like last year they actually got somebody really good to like fix a lot of the problems with it because it was built on Create React App, which if anybody knows what that is, like building something for a lot of people to use on that is probably really bad. So yeah, this is really cool to like be able to mess with this. Like you could push an update on this yourself right now and everybody, thousands of people would see it. So this is a huge low-hanging fruit. If anybody wants to work with PL on anything, this is a big one.
Yeah, and here's like some of the things that you can do with these. So you can actually pin your own files. Also on Kubo, you can set your node as either a server or basically just a client. The server version is meant to not be turned off. Most people are probably running just the normal client version, but you can pin, again, it won't be available if you turn your computer off, but you can pin your own content. You can download the CAR file, the content archive file, which is kind of cool. You can also publish to IPNS, is kind of cool. So if you've got an IPNS gateway, which is, again, kind of similar to DNS, basically it's a way to take, let's say, like a domain name or even a CID that somebody would use. You can actually point that, kind of route it through DNS so that CID points to always like the newest version of the file. So even if the CID changes, you can keep this same CID that kind of everybody has already and make sure that they're still seeing the newest version of the file. So you don't have to constantly update the links every time you change a file, right? Yeah, so that's pretty useful. Again, you can set your pinning service. You can do other things in here like set which gateway you want to use. Right here, public gateway. So Alex is using IPFS.io. You could use like web3.storage or any of the other gateways.
Can you create a custom share link? That would be like a subdomain.
Well, you can pretty much always like use like a traditional DNS like buy a domain, set up some DNS rules and just point that DNS to your IPNS settings, or basically you copy some IPNS settings to your DNS settings and point the domain to an IPFS file. It's something a lot of people do. You've done it, right?
Yeah, like it's really hard to like really show like, okay, this is a really good use of IPNS, but we have like a particular example that's really amazing. If you're doing a link tree on IPFS like we are, every user has a link for their IPFS page. Okay, so like here is an IPFS page. It's your page. It's got your name on it in whatever links you have. So that's a CID when we first created it. So when you go and you put new links on there, well, it's IPFS. You've got a new CID now. So all your friends are going to a different link. They're going to your old link, and so now you need to update. So IPNS, it was a huge update for us to where it's like, okay, now all of our users have an IPNS name that's mapped to you, and then we'll keep track of what needs to go there. And so, like, IPNS is like, there's not very many apps that use it, but like, to be using IPFS is one big infinity stone. To have IPNS working on it is like, okay, there we go. That's a whole nother deal too, so.
Yeah, just like DNS to the internet. If you didn't have DNS, you'd have to type out the IP address of all the, servers that you're trying to talk to. Yeah, just makes it easier. It's really helpful. But yeah, that's all we have right now.
That website that Angela was talking about is FileCoin.eu, right?
Yeah.
Should we check it out for a second?
Sure.
Yeah?
You can.
Okay.
I would go to the calculator, maybe it's more fun to look at.
And then so without IPNS, it's like if somebody clicks on the link that used to be valid but it's been updated, it's like they're just seeing a previous version.
Exactly.
Versioning, it's like
Yes,
a crude
previous
version
version.
kind of.
Right, so like.
And they don't even know that it's necessarily an older version. They just go, oh, here's the data that I
Right. So
clicked
like,
on that link, and that's what it is.
yeah, I would log into my open links and I would change my links around because I got like a cool new link, and so then I would have to go and update the old link on my Twitter. Whereas now, the link doesn't change because it's mapped to IPNS.
Right.
I would go to calc.falcon.io.
Oh, okay.
Calc.
Ooh, nice.
That's the
Domain
calculator.
separation.
Yeah.
The subdomain. That's really
Yeah, that should be it, I think so.
So how is this hosted?
Oh,
Okay, cool.
it's not IPFS.
Nice, good. Good.
So that's the new ROI calculator with storage providers that will come online in 2 weeks.
Nice, this is awesome.
Yeah, so this is
There's
like,
some alpha.
this
Hold
is
on,
so
hold on.
new that the PL network doesn't even have this.
You guys are really getting a sneak preview
Yeah,
here.
this is announced on all hands 2 days ago.
Super cool. Yeah.
Worth the price of admission right now.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
18
So you build
months,
stuff
that's
before?
awesome. Yeah.
So you can play around with it. It's like the second bar is very interesting. That's the amount of
Yes.
verified data that you'll
Right.
be doing.
Right, so like if you weren't storing any real data, you were just doing committed capacity, like you're underwater already.
How do you get to an 18-month of like 100,000 or something like that?
I mean, you've got to be storing real data with
Yeah,
FileCoin,
yeah.
FileCoin Plus, right?
Yeah.
This is basically the FileCoin
That's
Plus.
I would recommend that definitely. I mean, there's two very like key indicators there. When you look on the impact on earnings section, you see that the average Filecoin per block is like 17 right now, and the Filecoin price is currently 5.8 right now. Just
Yeah.
pulled it through the API.
Oh, cool, nice.
So these two you can play around with, but looking at the future of the network, as block rewards will decline. That's inherently how the protocol
Does this
works.
tool take into account the block reward declining?
What it does right now is that it will let you play with it. The tool works on what the situation is now, and it will take in somewhat of a decline, but I cannot predict the future because the decline or how much it will decline depends on the baseline minting. If you want to get into that, we need a whole new session.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe next month
Seriously.
we can dive into that if you want to.
Well, you don't know, like, the next halvening is gonna be
No,
in 6 months.
That's based on the raw capacity of the network.
Okay, so it's a function of the network
Yeah,
effects?
yeah, the protocol keeps track of that, and that's built in since the beginning.
And what is it, like every 30 seconds there's a new block?
Every 30 seconds is an epoch. And
It's an epoch.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then,
This is awesome, really cool tool.
How much, what's the
What do you got on
infrastructure
top?
cost to create that
6
setup
minutes.
right there?
oh,
minutes.
just
Yeah.
scroll down
Let's
to
get a
it,
picture.
the CapEx.
Yeah, yeah.
is
So
down
you want to put
there.
your slides up again for
Yeah,
good
you can
background?
scroll, if Dante can scroll down.
Yeah, scroll down, Dante.
CapEx.
That's the basic setup for 1 petabyte.
That's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
What's
That's
that?
not bad.
Wait, how much?
Count.
156 grand.
156K.
That's when you
We'll
run
break
it.
even in a year and a half, no problem.
Well, really not bad when you consider, like, okay, so this is the collateral needed.
Yeah, that's
Right
different.
now,
Yeah.
that's not that much money. When I started FileCoin mining, I mean, I think FileCoin was at like $100 or something.
Yeah,
So
that's
this kind of collateral cost a lot more back then.
I know.
You
Well,
could
Okay.
Take all that money out of the HELOC before they freeze the credit lines.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. Cool. Yeah. So we got 5 minutes. They're gonna kick us out, but we'd love to get a picture. If everybody can, if you want your picture taken, come up to the front.
Does anybody know what the picture taken?
Dave,
Yeah, who doesn't want the picture taken?
you want your picture
Yeah?
taken?
Would you mind taking a picture for us?
Yeah, no problem.
That's a perfect job, right?
Hey, I talked to Brady, he wants to meet you guys. I mean, obviously, it's totally to you if you guys wanna like do everything. Video. And it's a sweet.
Nice, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Brandon,
it.
nice to meet you, Dawson.
I just tried out water.
Yeah.
Proof of attendance here? Proof of attendance. How are you gonna get your proof of attendance, NFT?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
It's our NFT.
Anyone else? Alright, here we go, and FileCoin! Okay.
Commoditized storage, yay! Cheap storage! Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and also like, take any trash. Also, yeah, trash. Help yourself to more.
So you're doing with video? Or are you gonna be live here at FileCoin? What's going on?
It's a file.
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna try to use like the platform.
Basic. Yeah, right. Do you like live streaming too? It's just store it as video.
It's like
Yeah, let me know. If anything, I can just send it to you.
So if I was building up video content heavy Web3 social network,
So I'm sure like
storage, no problem. But wanting to have that YouTube like click the thing and it plays right away, that's like that's great. That's why live here at least has some kind of solution that makes sense.
From what I, the difference is that I think it's
Like I saw my
So then, what is it? They're basically incentivizing a bunch of transcoders essentially to say, here's the 5 cents. Render this video quickly.
and then the floor shifts beneath there.
like something like
How do you spell before to get in?
so like
so it's better. I also tried Beam Chat. Beam Chat would have failed my I still think any of that.
That works specifically with file.
But
Is it like
I
IPM?
all the
So yeah,
Take one price and guarantee you the store forever. Remember, that's like exactly. I store a file for a week, you store a file for 12 years.
and then it's like, you know, you see like, you know,
Okay, yeah, like, whoa, the Fed is their coin apparently, and then like,
well, no, you already have our
we don't have things like Saturn and stuff.
Okay. Oh, so would you say that what you're building would replace kind of live Here in that stack, you got storage below it. And your things for video specific.
Follow over 5 years, so it's easy, but they won't make it smarter, they'll just make it like a better ACU, and that's what I want. I think
How do you
at least 5 days for money to be really, or I have to go with the money on wire to get so that they get 20 bucks. And it'll clear it.
Okay. Same conversation was downstairs in the lobby. Yeah, in the lobby. Yep. So sorry to interrupt. Let's just move this in the lobby. In the lobby. Everybody, none of these conversations need to end at all.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna make these two, you're gonna make it.
No, leave it.
You're gonna be competing with crypto. And so I'm like, okay, so I love that. Finally, cryptos are competing with the government, and the government's trying to play in this new market. And I'm like, whoa, wow, the cryptos made the government kind of like how it's kind of like how Microsoft made Google dance.
I have heard like theories of one guy brought it out. Sorry, what other trying to create like it just don't work.
Now, the US might show you some capability, might gain additional sanctions. Like even like the holding.
Oh yeah, we gotta go.
Last one didn't say. I don't know if that's a law.
Beautiful copy that we
No, I'm good.
I've done every stuff.
Yeah, it's always an adventure.
It is, all the cables, and they're all important, you know. Like,
I know, right? Seriously, you forget one, you're screwed.
Go quick and
Yes, thank you.
Dante, do you need any help, or do you want me to take this?
I'm okay, just make sure there's no
Make sure
trash.
no trash, yeah.
this is yours, right?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
You still have drinks in it, right?
Alright, it's good to go. Thanks so much, Emily, really appreciate it.
On your way out, do you think you could take that podium back to ACL, or do you need help?
No, we're good. Would you actually?
What, this one?
Yeah. That would be very. Was right down the hall?
Yeah, just down the hall,
This
in
way?
a room called, Western City Limits.
Okay.
And you just put it back by the TS. But everything else looks great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Oh, they were? Thank you all, have a great night. See you then.
Did you give the validations to Alex? The parking validation?
I gave, yeah, I came in like midway and I
Okay.
gave some. Do you need one? I have some right here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to turn